Welcome to the webinar this morning on building air quality with our guests from Air Things and Matic Industries.
And we will have a live Q&A, so feel free to broadcast your questions. I am on it like a hawk. The tough ones, the easy ones, the strange ones. Please feel free to throw them in the chat because that will be live monitored. And whether it's live here or in a follow-up, we will definitely make sure we get all your questions answered. So as well as some direct reserve time at the end as well.
So I'm Adrian, and this is Andy over here who's chatting. We'll be hosting the event. We're both from Realnets.
A beautiful day to talk about air quality.
Oh my gosh, it's starting to be spring, and I could not be more excited. I've got all my windows open. I am breathing easy. All right, so I want to welcome everybody. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Realnets or have worked with us in the past, but a lot of you might be from other groups. So just to give you a little introduction, Realnets is a Chicago-based IT and property technology agency. And we've been doing a lot of work over the last year, trying to help businesses adapt to COVID and the challenges there, building the point of sale systems for outdoor restaurant tents, doing touchless intercoms, really helping convert buildings into COVID safe spaces using technology. So this, as we're moving into buildings again, ventilation is something that has come up in a lot of conversations about getting schools to reopen safely, getting places to stay open, and not close down again. So we thought that this would be a really good opportunity to talk about how air quality and that kind of safety and technology overlap. So we've invited some guests to come help us have that conversation. Even just like looking at these crowded spaces again, our mindset is so changed from what it was a year ago, and our awareness is so heightened in terms of what are we breathing, how close are we to each other, are these surfaces clean. I think we all have this really heightened sense of this new space and this new world that we're going back to. But what about after COVID? Will these changes that we're making stick? What's just going to be an adjustment going back to regular life? And what's going to be something that's worth the long-term investment? And really, there's a big price tag that has gone sort of unseen and spoken about in terms of just the regular flu and how much that costs businesses and productivity, how much cognitive function, is aided by better air quality in spaces. So this is really a new, interesting space to start building premium amenities and really as a sales point to buildings. So I'm going to introduce everybody on the panel because you don't want to listen to me talk all day. At least get to the real experts. So Brian Schoen, president of Realnets, if you want to say hi and introduce yourself.
Oh, hey. Good to be here this morning. Good to, have a topic like this. I've been thinking a lot on all the different emerging technologies. Even prior to COVID, we were seeing all kinds of requests in some of these areas. And, I'm pretty excited to kind of talk about things from a few different angles. We're definitely seeing things from, the people and coming back to buildings, come back to work, our own workforce here. We had, a lot of different reactions to this, and I'm interested in kind of hearing what everyone's experience has been, because, I think just like any business owner or property, manager or what have you, it's like, we're just looking at what our neighbors are doing, trying to figure out like what the trends are, what the what the employees' comfort levels are. Like all those things are starting to kind of solidify. So this is just a good time to kind of get together and talk about all these things from like, the personal level, from, kind of the company level, and then actually, from the property ownership front. And, we'll have a good discussion about that. And I'm kind of excited about all the technologies that are emerging because, air quality in the context that we're talking about has just been something that just goes kind of unlooked at, and everyone just kind of hopes is okay. And we have a lot of tools now to, not have to guess. So
Absolutely. And just as an awesome segue, so I'm going to introduce Martin, I'm sorry, to, as somebody who's really got expertise in those monitoring and some of those tools.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm joining you from the other side of the ocean. So I'm actually in Oslo, Norway. My name is Martin. As I said, I'm a Norwegian Irishman. So I do have maybe a bit of a peculiar accent. So I hope it doesn't faze people on our panel here today. But I'm very much looking forward to geeking out about air quality with Matt and Brian today. So it'll be fun. Shall I spend a few minutes just giving a little bit of an intro and context, introduce myself and Air Things?
Of course.
We're a bit more than we've been doing air quality monitoring and devices for more than 13 years. So we're a bit more than, I would say we're a bit more than average obsessed about the air that we're all breathing. Some people lovingly call us the air geeks. I don't mind that. And we're a Norwegian air quality monitoring company, and we've been working with Matt Maddock for quite a few years, and we've been in the US now for, I'd say, 6, 7, 8 years already. I have a few slides even with some nice pictures. Can I show those, Adrian? Is that okay?
Yeah, I will pull those up for you.
Because I don't know if any of you are into chess, but I want to draw, my ambition here today is really get you to understand that air quality is a lot more than just something we do breathing. It really impacts our body in so many ways. And that's why we have, so this is Magnus Carlsen, a big pride in Norway. He's a chess grandmaster, a world champion in chess. And he's also one of our promoters there because, as he says, if he wants to perform at top level in his chess tournaments, it's not only about the food that he eats. It's not only about his health and activity levels. He has to breathe well to play well. Oh, you're showing them all the teasers now from my other slides.
I'm sorry.
Can we go back?
I was trying to find the one that you might have talked about.
It was the one where we had like the time I was bragging. It was my bragging slide in the beginning. So I want to let that bragging slide sink in a little bit more, if we can.
I think the camera on your computer is your bragging slide, Martin.
Well, I also do have our wait. Oh, what a coincidence. Is this our portfolio sensors in the background? I must have left them there accidentally. But we do have some pretty good looking devices. Every time we talk to
Martin, he pulls this book off the shelf and starts talking about the research that they've done. And
I might save pulling out this book for a bit later, Adrian. But there is some good nuggets. If you want to geek out on air quality, this is the book.
Maybe when we're done, I'll pull something off the shelf behind me and we'll celebrate.
We'll do that in the Q&A at the end, so we all have something to look forward to. So these are the devices we work. They're battery, wireless, operated indoor air quality sensors that give you a comprehensive overview of the air that we're breathing within our buildings. The CES in Las Vegas have given us quite a few awards. I was a bit gutted that I couldn't travel and accept it myself in January. So it was a digital award ceremony this year. But in 2019, Time Magazine did say it was one of the best inventions in 2019. So thank you, Andy. Silent applause. But let's go into some air geeking, because I have some thoughts here to share, and it just baffles me. It baffles me. We all breathe 21,000 times a day, and then and the lack of demand that we're having, our awareness that we're having in terms of what's in that air. Like, where's the ingredients list of the buildings when we enter a building to understand what's in the air and how's the air impacting us? Last time I went to a McDonald's and I took a cheesy cheeseburger. I even got a full nutritional breakdown, and I knew exactly how the burger I was going to eat was going to impact my body. But we don't have the same. I think people now are going to be getting the same expectations for the air we're breathing. We see it with fitness and fitness trackers and step counters. So this expectations about insights is something as building owners and building operators have to take on board. And we've seen how this expectation have gone from food to activity levels. And even now, as an indicator of this, in the latest version of the Apple smartphone operating system, they've actually included in the weather app air quality data outside. I think soon we'll be expecting to say the same inside the building, and that's what we're talking about today. And why does this matter? I think is on the next slide, Adrian. It's because air and air quality within our buildings is about so much more than just a comfort parameter. This impacts not only our health, our well-being, but also our cognition. And as you can see, just a few examples from the last few months I picked up in some newspaper articles, how the baffling ways in which air impacts us. It can cause infertility, it causes irreversible sight loss, even violent crime rates. So it's really something that we need to take on board, and something we are increasingly taking on board as both users, operators, and owners of buildings. And even though these slides are focusing on the outdoor air quality, if any of you have ever been on a webinar about air quality before, I'm sure you've gotten the cliche statement that we spend 90% of our time inside. And it's just such a substantial statement. I don't think it deserves to be a cliche. So that's why I've rephrased it here. And this is actually a true fact that I read on page 78 of this book. Human beings, we spend more time inside the building than certain species of whales spend underwater. So it really is an environment we need to take into account, and we need to understand how that environment inside the buildings are impacting us on our buildings.
I was just wondering how you got a video of me on vacation last month.
Swimming.
You staged it for me, Andy, because we were planning this webinar, and you said,
well, I was just so sick of being indoors and underwater. I had to come up for a breath of air.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of the and Andy, what have you been thinking? Have you had this thought, which you see on the next slide, in the last few months?
Well, it's just, and all my customers who are on the front lines of ownership and management of these buildings, we have all of this data at our wrist. You said the Apple Watch. I know how many steps, I know how many calories, I know all these things about myself and my activity, but you never go into a space and like you said, like what is in the air I'm breathing. And, as a man who's implemented and sold and talked about many technologies, like the barrier to entry of like, how could I possibly deploy something so effective throughout my building? Like how does it even connect? Everyone assumes like live data means hardwire, when now in the world of, better cell service and DAS systems and things of the like, it's just like that, and Matt and his, and so the barrier to entry in terms of installing it is low, in terms of tweaking it is low. And, Matt and his team have designed and implemented countless systems across the city, and just, having someone with the experience of HVAC and like those systems for many years, their ability to tweak and design things as the data is coming through, I think makes the value from the ownership side better, because they're not just like throwing something up there and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. It's like something that's very easily malleable to get the correct data and put it on my wrist. So when I'm coming in, I know exactly what's going on, and along with how many steps it took me to get there.
Yeah. And it's so easy now with, and we're calling this like all these technologies coming into our building, proptech, property technology is making it so easy to share and interact with this data throughout the buildings, and leverage this for not only a healthier environment, but a more energy efficient building, which is really what we want to explore today, right?
Yeah.
I think my 5-minute intro is up. So I'm going to, I really want us to introduce the legend himself, Matt Maddock.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and now that we've been talking about the man without introducing him, let's let Matt introduce himself, and let me pull up.
It's obvious that I'm half Irish, guys. I do. Yeah. There is a bit of a gift of the gab. I have so much to talk about. I love this topic. So if for those of you that can't stay until the end of the webinar, we'll be meeting in Andy's background afterwards to discuss more.
Yeah, I know. I had to chase you out of here this morning.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Martin. I'm probably the least important person in this webinar, but I'm so happy to be here. And thanks to Realnets for putting this on. I think it's a great idea and a great moment in time to have this seminar. I've just, as been said, I was working with AirThings for about 2 or 3 years now in the Chicago area, and we've gotten a lot of great interest from building owners on actually monitoring the air quality in their buildings, which is what we're talking about today. Somebody just brought it up. I don't, Martin probably, or maybe Andy, all this information is available, or a lot of this information is already available, but it isn't coming to owners in a format that they can use to and make it actionable information. Either it's not incorporated properly, or it's not trended. It might be live, but it isn't coming to ownership or management in a way that they can look at it and make decisions based on that information. And that's what Airthings and what we're doing is really giving to ownership. It's not only information, but information that's put together in a way that they can look at it, see what's happening in their building, and make adjustments to the air quality in their building. And that's, to me, that's probably the biggest thing that Airthings is doing and helping building owners and managers with. So I'm just happy to be here today. Great. I think it's a great discussion. I think there's a lot of great topics that are going to come out today. So thank you guys
Matt,
for having us.
I think you said something really interesting last time we chatted, where you were saying in the old days that you know, you were able to measure CO2 levels and things like that, and but it was in real time. Like there was no collective of data that could show a trend or give you anything interesting or valuable to take away. It was just, this is the number right now, I guess.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what I just touched on. It wasn't put together for the ownership or management in a way they could actually use it and address a situation. It was more like, we had a problem a week ago, and let's try and go back and see what the situation was. Whereas this is the Airthings product, and the Airthings system is more real time, but it's monitoring it continuously and updating it continuously and reporting back in a way that management can use it. And, you know, there's actually alerts that go out that, hey, you have a problem with your CO2, you have a problem with your temperature. So we can send out real-time alerts that there's a problem, as opposed to finding out from either a tenant complaint or finding out from maybe a bad situation in your building. So we're on top of it. We're addressing it in real time, but we're also giving the building management tools that they can operate their building more efficiently and more healthy.
And I think we focus a lot on the back end and the serious coding and technologies that drive all that data. But then what about the front end? You know, how can I easily interpret something without having to go through a long understanding? And I just need to know how it is now. And I think, you know, we're finally in a place, you know, and after seeing it with my own eyes, you know, it's something that is here today finally. And, you know, looking forward to incorporating it into more of the technologies that are on the streets these days.
So now I'd like to kind of kick off into the meat and potatoes of really, you know, what it is we're talking about, and you know, what people need to be looking for, how, you know, they should be measuring things, what, you know, are the results and effects of actually implementing those, and from a business perspective as well, like what value are you adding to your property, and so really just to get people into the nitty gritty of things that they can take away. So I have some questions here that kind of prompt some conversation for everybody. And so just to get us all started, you know, you guys all have been working in this space for, you know, a really long time. And so I think Brian has some really interesting insights on, you know, how has proptech, you know, changed over the last 10 years? You know, how does this look different today than it did, you know, back when you all started?
Yeah, you know, I think the primary change has been that we're seeing layers of technology starting to appear. We have people coming to their desks with personal devices. We have businesses coming into lease space with their devices. We have the ownership of the building deploying their devices, and then, you know, the advent of a whole host of wireless solutions Andy touched upon. the idea that I don't have to open walls up and pull wire, just cuts the cost by a serious magnitude. And then on top of it, we have the quality of the sensors coming to market and the variety of them. The cost points have just dropped probably 5 to 10 fold on a lot of these fronts for all intents and purposes, all in the last 5 to 10 years. So, now you have a whole host of data points coming in at a low dollar amount. The analytics side of it is starting to catch up, and some of the discussion just a second ago about being able to see items in real time. My first thought was like, how some of these large banquet halls, places that you're in 2,000-3,000 people in a single space, it's critical because you have a failure in air quality. And I was just thinking back to like when the pandemic started, CDC came out with guidance that said that if you are able to, you should be opening fresh air intakes in the buildings at a higher level or maximum level if possible. And if you think about it, with some of the costs that were projected about flu and things like that, it's like we should probably be getting more fresh air in general. And I think that what is going to start to take place is that the retail, especially the retail restaurant world, is going to be looking for spaces that they can have. They're going to want more accountability for in their leases. There's going to be a sea wave of people, from a consumer side that are going to have a expectation. And I started to see this stuff right after some of the openings. I went to our local casino for a meal, and all the air testing, purification, all that stuff is like mounted eye level, when you walk in, because they want to make you comfortable. They want to get people back into these buildings. And, there's kind of a multitude of things at work. You're trying to make people comfortable about the spaces. There's the leasee ownership relationship that, they're trying to have some accountability. And, then there's some of the things that are starting to become clear, like Martin was talking about with like, no, your workforce actually is more productive with some of these things addressed. So
that's opens up an interesting conversation, and maybe you and Martin could speak to this a little bit. Somebody in the chat posed a really interesting question, and we've talked about it a little bit offline before, but Eric asks, the orientation to date has been focused on the measurement of the exposures, but in light of the impacts of poor indoor air quality, continuous monitoring is needed to support the health and well-being of employees, especially vulnerable populations. Do you see more stakeholders becoming involved in the purchase decision-making process? So it's interesting, like you were saying at this casino, that they're actually putting the air quality, equipment at eye level. It's being put in spaces where people are aware of it. It's being a selling point to make people more comfortable in a space. So I think that's one way that it puts a little bit of power in the people who aren't ownership, but to put pressure or create demand for those sorts of things. But how is it that you see this kind of push and pull between the people who benefit and the people who actually have to pay for the technology?
But I've seen those people take a very serious and direct approach in the buying process, especially as a sales guy who's feeling the quotes and, incentivized to facilitate the transaction. Most times I'm calling people, I'm doing my follow-ups. This is something that's heavily coming in. Inbound, and I can definitely say that the ownership that I'm dealing with is definitely very hot on their priority and conversion list.
And I don't think it should. It's an interesting question, because I don't think it should change. It still needs to be the building owner or operator that owns and purchases this. But if you don't, the cases I'm saying now is tenants, the people that have the lease in the building, because of the concern about this and because of their responsibility around ensuring a healthy and safe indoor environment, they're buying these themselves. They're going directly to the likes of Matt or Andy and saying, actually, we have this lease in the building. We're worried about our office environment. Oh yeah, is it your building? No, we're renting the space, but we want to make sure that it's under control, and we don't want to just monitor temperature and humidity. We want air quality monitoring, and then we're talking about CO2 monitoring, of course, which is so pertinent in these COVID days, because that's the best indicator you have to indicate how much of another person's breath are you breathing. And that's why CO2 monitors now in Europe, I can't talk about the US, but in Europe, they're selling like hotcakes. Like some of our warehouses, some of our storages on the continent of Europe are just selling out because of national and regional guidelines requiring CO2 monitors to safely reopen again. And they also, so your tenants are buying monitors to check the temperature, humidity, CO2, the chemicals in the air, the dust particles, particulate in the air, and they want this comprehensive monitoring. So if you're not in the forefront, I'm pretty sure that your tenants, your office managers, the CEO of the company is thinking already, okay, do we have control of the air quality within my building and where my office workers are working? That's my take on that. I know it's not answering the initial question, which is what's happened with proptech the last 10 years, but we've gone on a good segue
transitioned. Here. Yeah, we transitioned.
Yeah, it's actually, if I get back to my slideshow, it just segues into the next question that I had to discuss. So, what's driving people to new air quality measures? And I know Martin has spoken to this.
We've already touched the elephant in the room, right? I think so. My journey in terms of air quality measurement is that this was an ongoing trend, and it's just been hype, and we were heading this direction anyway. In terms of the parameters we monitor, both inside and outdoors, we're realizing the research in the last 3 years is just mind-baffling, understanding how much the air actually impacts us. It's not just about our lungs and respiratory, it's impacting our brains, as we talked about, our sight, behavior. There's just so many myriad ways in which the air that we breathe impacts our bodies, our health, our cognition. We need to take this seriously. So this was an ongoing trend. Now the last year, everyone's been thinking about what's in the air I'm breathing, and we're just like supercharged a trajectory about air quality monitoring, both primarily inside, but also outside.
Matt, do you see kind of an increased demand in your business, like shifting attitudes?
Yeah, absolutely, Adrian. And I see, so the building management side, I mean, Martin's talking about the renter, the lease holders, and that's definitely true, but also the building management side wants people to come back to their buildings, and they want people to feel safe coming back. So they're definitely investing in this field of air quality and monitoring their air quality to make sure and to show tenants that, hey, the building is safe to come back to. Our air quality is safe. We're monitoring it 24/7. They are very interested, as you could imagine, in getting people back into their buildings. So yeah, they're definitely involved in purchasing the equipment and in starting this monitoring. And we've been working with, as Andy said earlier, just dozens of buildings and operators to get these systems installed. So it's a big thing, and it's as Martin said, it's growing.
Yeah.
And I'm a kind of guy that I love the pack bar. I love the feeling of the people on the packed blue line coming from the airport at 5. And I'm in a place now where I've like totally taken a step back from that mindset. And now I'm just like, like everyone else, we're like, well, do I come in here? Do I go? I see people, I get scared. And it's so backwards for me that I think the only thing that gets me back is like this kind of data. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect, like, God bless the QR code for coming back after like 10 years of being dormant, but you should be able to find out these things before you go into a place, and I think the data is the only thing that's going to, at least from my end, make me feel more comfortable, because the ambiguously going in and like trusting the thing is, with all this has definitely changed.
So I think that opens up one question from the chat that is mostly just kind of funny, but I did see this article the other day. There was a Men's Health article saying that pollution is reducing penis size and sperm count. So it's become a Men's Health question as well. So, I mean, I'm sure
True.
that will, strike fear in many hearts.
It doesn't take much for us men, so.
I was, on that, not that topic specifically, but like just the from a business ownership standpoint, having, employees, like, I think there's been a lot of discussion about how much of the work at home component is going to stick around, and I've talked to a lot of business owners and there's a lot of desire to get people back in the office. I don't think that the work at home scenario is for a good portion of people working from home. I think companies want to see come back in some capacity, and just having some areas of reassurance, I think are an important factor for businesses to have just some sense of what's going on in the invisible space of air quality.
Are you seeing in the US? So what I'm seeing in Europe is this becoming a requirement for you not only to monitor these parameters, but also display them to the users, whether it's schools or offices. Several national regulatory bodies have now mandated that you not only monitor CO2, but also display the results to anyone in the space, so they know that it's safe to return here because you have sufficient ventilation to reduce the transmission risk. Are you seeing that in certain parts of the US as well, that this is becoming mandatory to have it to safely reopen?
This is the problem with Europe. They're concerned about people's health, and I've not heard of any legislation of that type. I've often wondered as the equipment becomes readily available and super cost effective. I got to imagine the legal community is working on a lot of different inroads for liability scenarios, and I have to imagine tenant lease clauses in the HVAC arena are getting moving from a paragraph to several pages as time evolves here. So I think that the what we see in the technology space is like some of these leases are very complex when it comes to riser management and what's going on in the wire in the walls and utility services and tie-ins with service providers, and then there's really nothing in a lot of cases. HVAC will be we need air conditioning from 7 to 6, so I have to imagine that whole area of the equation is going to get a lot more scrutiny in the next,
and actually, I think what's you mentioned litigation and litigation risk. What we're seeing now in the UK is there's the first court cases are coming where workers have documented that they've had inferior air quality in their office environments, and they're taking those and they can show to certain illnesses or follow up as a result of poor ventilation or poor indoor environment, and their cases are coming now. So now cases are coming as a result of it. So now a lot of some of the interest, and it's early. It's not a wave of activity here. It's an interesting trend to play on, particularly post-COVID. These office building owners and operators are now wanting to regularly document the air quality within their space as a preventative measure, so to show that actually we've had control of the air quality and none of this, and this within the government guidelines. So this is about the history, like we talked about proptech and the history of proptech and measuring data. I think it'll become so much more important. I don't know what you're seeing in the US. I think it'll be so much more important that you have a BMS system where you can actually log and store these values. And we're not talking about temperature and humidity. We're talking about CO2. We're talking about volatile organic compounds. We're talking about particulate matter, PM values within your building, and that you can document that you've had a healthy indoor environment for the course of all your employees to minimize, maybe we're talking purely the litigation risk here, but I think also for the best of the people in the building as well, but to minimize that risk. Is this something you're seeing in the US?
On that note, we have a great question. Do you think there's any current rules and regulations that may prevent or make it tougher for owners to make decisions and moves on air quality, or is it pretty much like there's really there should be no barrier to entry in terms of rules and regulations, whether locally or federally?
So
I'm not, yeah.
does anyone have a?
Well,
I was going to actually ask sort of part of this topic. So I think in Europe, there might be a little bit more potential for actual like government regulation, and that where I think what I would see more likely in the US is maybe more privatized, badges or seals or certifications that you could receive. But I was gonna ask you guys if you've seen companies that are starting to take ownership of this, things that are getting recognized as saying like, I have this seal on my door, like a health grade at a restaurant, that this building is safe and certified.
yeah, so I think I can answer that, Adrian. There are definitely organizations popping up, whether it's well building, reset. There's a couple, there's probably more than that, 3 or 4 that I'm aware of, that are actually going in similar to like LEED did with energy management and reducing energy footprint. And they're going in and certifying buildings as healthy buildings, or certifying spaces as healthy spaces. For instance, if you're leasing a floor in a building, you don't want to, the tenant doesn't want to do the whole building, but it wants to, confirm to hit for their employees that space is good quality. Absolutely, there's a big private push for healthy building or healthy space certification in the US. It's still in its infancy, but it's growing. A lot of the building ownership is interested in it. They're studying it. They're looking at the different certifications and seeing if they want to, how deep they want to go into that. But it is still early in that cycle. So,
I had a question, Matt, for you. So, do you think there's like I would think some of these work against each other. I mean, the building, the more fresh air intake, I would think the less efficient the building is. I mean, are there some conversations about like how they work in tandem and things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been engineers and ASHRAE and so on are familiar with that push and pull, the yin and yang of increased outdoor air and increased energy. And there is a balance there. The only way to find that balance, though, is to monitor what's going on. If you're not monitoring it, you're probably either bringing in too much outside air, or your air quality is not good enough because you're driving, energy down. So the only way to really marry the two of them and get the best of both worlds is to really monitor it and, not bring in too much outdoor air, but bring in enough so that it's healthy. And there's other ways to reduce energy by monitoring as well. Maybe you start up your air conditioning system in the summertime an hour later. You look at what time your lights are going on and off. Maybe you put in light sensors, where there's only lights on if the room's occupied. So all those things where we can monitor with the AirThings product and help building ownership be both healthy and energy conservative. So it all starts with if you're not monitoring, you're going to be lost in making any of these decisions.
Yeah. So there's a kind of an interesting question in the chat, which I just got replaced by something else. But a lot of these things seem to be converging on, who's got the football in the space. So, is it an HVAC service to be able to monitor and tell building owners, where the problems are and what they need to fix, and who's keeping track of these things? Is it the stakeholders, the employees, the people who are in the buildings, to be able to maybe use, their Fitbit or whatever, this more accessible technology to be able to monitor their own spaces and put that demand on, building owners? Or is it part of the, props tech, kind of IT space to be able to, manage a smart building in terms of, climate control and security and all these pieces that are becoming more and more, dashboard based. So, like, where do you think that responsibility is going to start to lie?
I mean, I'll take that a little bit. So the average high rise, probably has several hundred fire sensors. The HVAC system has dozens of data points coming in. You have third-party monitoring solutions for water leaks and water efficiency. You have systems now that are augmenting the security and situational awareness, glass breaks, and you might have 500-600 input devices going into a building now, and there's fragmentation. And so I think what we see in, like, for instance, the air space is a accumulation of a lot of data points and a rendering of a simple output of, like, is this space good or not? And if not, a simple answers to what's going on so that it can be responded to. But I think that the long-term trajectory is a continual consolidation of those data points into more and more analytic platform solutions that are going to give us, similar to Airthings, a red or a green dot on a particular space or building as a whole, and so the ownership has simple rendered monitoring scenarios where they're not just getting raw data in and trying to have to take mid-management personnel to try to figure out what's going on. It's more everyone's just getting an alert that there's a problem, and that's we're not there yet. I mean, we're there in a lot of individual spaces, but the industry as a whole is moving towards some kind of consolidation, I think, of a lot of these data points.
Yeah, I think I've heard Martin speak about this in the past of, like, air quality, poor air quality and, like, kind of common commercial spaces is sort of has the same effect as having, like, your employee drunk on, like, 2 pints of beer. And I know from experience,
CO2 levels at 1200 ppm is equivalent to having 2 pints of beer.
Yeah, I mean, that's shocking. But
So
go ahead.
No, and it just brings me back again to, if I can geek out a bit more about air and why this matters. I know it's not from the tenant's perspective, from the people sitting in the space, and we want to create, first and foremost, let's make people comfortable and safe about returning to the space. And I think that's our first priority now with everything we're doing, ensuring that we're monitoring there to ensure that it's minimizing the risk of virus transmission, and encouraging and ensuring people are aware of the spaces they're in are safely and well ventilated to minimize this risk.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a day when we get through this, and then we have to understand how the air we breathe actually impacts the productivity, impacts our cognition, our thinking, our brain power at work. And just the average office will actually very often, a meeting room in the average office will regularly go over 1200 ppm. And these are the meeting rooms where you're making strategic, important decisions about your company, you're processing information, you're discussing, and you're breathing out CO2, which is not only an indicator for how much of another person's breath you're doing, is also an inhibitor for our cognitive abilities. So once those levels reach 1,200 parts per million, that's your cognition has decreased to the extent that you've had 2 drinks with Andy in his bar.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it just.
What about if I had 2 beers and had bad air in here?
And that's even worse, right? And then it's exponential.
I think
all right, I'll go get one and try it out.
There's so much. The research here is still coming in, and there was a trend already. It's very good timing for Professor Joseph Allen from Harvard University when he published his book last year. But the latest research conducted, particularly the groundbreaking research done at Harvard University and Syracuse University, where they've built up fake office environments with finely controlled ventilation systems. They brought in knowledge workers to really test what do long-term exposure of various levels of CO2 and volatile organic compounds, VOC, how does that really impact their ability to do strategic thinking, information handling, making decisions, and solving complex problems. And the results is that ventilation is the most effective way to, no, sorry, let me rephrase this. I want to get my punchline here right. This is very important for a good point. If I had a pharmaceutical company and we had a research department and we developed a pill where you could double your IQ, you could double your intelligence by just taking this pill, the market cap of that company would be off the charts. We have that pill, and that pill is ensuring sufficient ventilation in your spaces, and that will double. And the results, there was a slide earlier that I didn't have time to show. It'll double the cognitive abilities of people working in an office environment. Read this book and you'll get the results, why we should really care about the indoor environment, and so much more about, I think it's an important element in terms of energy optimizing our buildings. There'll be the demands, whether it's from your tenants or whether you're in the forefront and you as a building owner and operator put these measures in place to ensure and communicate that you have a healthy and productive indoor environment. I think that's where you're going to win, and that's where you're going to succeed with this. Use this opportunity we have now with the current situation, safely reopen using continuous monitoring, displaying to your tenants that you have good air quality, and then you'll already be winning at the other side because you already have the best, most productive indoor environments. That's my little spiel. Did I manage the punchline now better?
That was better than any bumper sticker I've ever seen in traffic.
I think from an ownership standpoint, or as a property owner, leasing, I hear, Martin basically connecting with people that are going to becoming with this equipment and, trying to hold me accountable. So I see like the writing is on the wall, that, this isn't going away kind of a thing. And that it's going to be marketable. It's going to be something to deal with. I certainly, as a property owner, don't want a tenant coming in with this data and bringing it to me without me having my own set of data and my own, ability to understand what they're saying. I think that's a part of why we wanted to put this together, was just, I think that just having awareness that this trend is here and it's here to stay is important, strategically when, developing properties. I mean, we've had some experience here in the recent year working on a new office development that incorporated a lot of air quality components, and it seems to be a very important component of what we did.
A really enticing pitch about why this matters, and I think that over the years that I've been in offices, people talk about that 3 o'clock slump, or this they used to call it a sick building syndrome or something like that. Everybody kind of knew that there was a problem, but nobody had a way to make it visible. So I think, like Brian was saying, these interfaces on, that shows you a green or a red dot, that's so easy to read, and make those invisible things visible is a really important component to what we're talking about. And as we kind of reach the end of our talk, and I think there's a lot of questions in the chat. So about this in particular, I think it's probably a really good time to start talking about specifically, what can you do? What are some of these products? If you want to talk about some of the air filters, people are asking about what kind of square footage that they take up, and that might be information that we can supply you offline later if you request it from us. But maybe just some broad strokes about what are the HVAC solutions, what are the technology solutions?
Yeah, Adrian, I think I can jump on that real quick. So a lot of ownership, a lot of engineers, service contractors are being asked, what should we do? What should we do to our building? We know maybe we should increase fresh air. What are the things we need to do? And my first recommendation is, first of all, see what the existing system is. So install some measurement equipment for, you know, $3,000, you can monitor a big, huge space and see what your existing air quality is before you go spending money to upgrade a system, maybe, you know, new filters or adding plasma ions equipment or UV lights, all these things to treat your air. First thing you should do is see what the air quality, what the existing air quality is, and then you'll know what you need to do from there. So it's a very, very small investment up front to figure out what you should be doing.
Very, very good point. And be data driven. Be data driven in your decisions. And it's such a cheap data point to get to just monitor, get some monitoring in place, and you know the best investments you can make. Don't just assume that you need this capacity on your ventilation system or this capacity on your filtration system. Monitor and see what the situation is and make a data-driven, informed, ROI-based decision on it.
And we have unfortunately seen the byproduct of bad data spread in our own world, you know, so having a reliable baseline, you know, for all these things, you know, before you make an investment, or, you know, if you're on the ownership side, before your tenants start coming to you with data, you know, you're going to want to have your own baseline that just those are the facts of the matter of the air. And then you can use that to make your informed decisions, or, you know, accommodate tenants in any way after you've evaluated. 'Cause I think that there's maybe places that we perceive as really bad, but maybe aren't that bad, you know, like to say all restaurants can't be open, but maybe a quarter of them have a cross draft that easily ventilates, you know, and to Matt's point, like just figure out what's really going on in the space and then make that as your next step with some informed data.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, and there's a question in the chat that's related to this as well. How do people self-educate about what levels should, you know, are right, what they're looking for? Person in the chat asks, what is the complete list of offensive irritants, pollutants, weather variables that can be tracked indoor location? I see a lot of devices emerging, but they all focus on different things. One tracks mold, one does not, for example.
I'll give a quick hint. I would reference well buildings and Reset and Air Rated, three of the indoor environment focused building standard certification bodies. They've done the legwork for us. I would reference them. They're and when you go into the standards, they're very easy to read. They'll tell you the parameters you should be most worried about that they have top of mind, and they also reference the research papers of why these matter. Maybe there's some regulatory about EPA. Also, I was on a webinar yesterday with the EPA in the US, and they also talked about these sensor technologies coming in, and they were aligned with what I saw in Well and Reset. But at least that's a globally good reference point to go into. Well, version 2, Reset core and shell, or Reset the commercial interiors, and you get a list of the parameters and what levels that you need to maintain.
And from what you read about those certifications, Martin, how do you think it relates to the initiatives in the UK, such as PAS 3003 or BASH, you know, buildings as a safe haven? Are they comparable, or? Ooh,
wow, that was a very detailed question.
It is not my own.
Okay, Andy, I was wondering, where's my hat? Because I need to take my hats off to Andy now. That was
it's a crazy thing. All the fun facts you learn in a bar, you know.
Yeah, that's true. It's there are new regulatory guidance coming in the UK now. Very interesting. I don't know the details. It's still out for hearing. The last I knew, I think it's a good point we should mention them in the chat so people look into them. I don't know how they relate to or link to Well or Reset. I don't actually know the full details of them yet either. I was in the webinar last week where this was initially presented, so it's actually quite new to me as well. But
Martin, you don't have a book on your shelf for this?
I might have something on my Kindle here. Let me look up quickly.
Oh, my Kindle.
I have just something to add on, you know, organizationally. So we maintain and manage IT infrastructure, and the never-ending expansion of security and policy-driven requirements. Basically, we see companies that really didn't have a process surrounding certain areas having to develop it. And if there's one thing I would recommend, it's like, we've talked a lot about getting data, monitoring scenarios so that we can come up with a strategy. I really recommend, taking in your organization the approach that you need to put this into a vein of having someone have a responsibility over it, building a program surrounding it, making sure the data points, the alerts are looked at on a quarterly basis, have some kind of policy and structure surrounding environmental surfaces in your organization, because it just will be kind of a hot topic and there'll be a bunch of activity. And then, this is something that is a long haul kind of a thing. And you really need to have regular touch points on it. And the technology is constantly changing. The monitoring surfaces are changing. How people interact with this stuff is changing. And it's all happening like quarterly. So, just having a program surrounding it and putting the effort in over a long period of time is, I think, more fruitful than kind of just rushing into a particular solution and implementing it without a lot of background data and information about how you're going to maintain it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great place to close out. We're about the end of the hour. So that was a really great conversation. And I want to, anybody who had any lingering questions in the chat, I'm going to try to compile a few points and resources that I can send out to you, or you can download the deck that we used today. So if you guys have any lingering questions, you can email me directly at ashone@realnets.com. But I want to thank everybody who attended today, and for all of our panelists. I think it was just a great conversation. And from the chat, outstanding webinar. Thanks to all.
It's very fun to bring an Airthings air quality sensor on a plane.
What does it say?
Oh,
Whoa!
no.
Ooh,
It's
people are getting
crazy.
some bonus footage here. What's that like?
These are the text. It's interesting to try different airlines. So yeah, I flew with the Boeing Dreamliner. Isn't that the latest Boeing plane? Really nice CO2 levels. They were hovering around 900 the whole time. So they were really good control, and it's definitely better environment. Yeah. But then I was an older Boeing 737. And there the CO2 levels, they were okay in the first 20 minutes, and then they peaked up at 1,500 ppm for the rest of the flight. And the same also with the chemicals in the air were really high.
So you're the guy on the plane with like an oxygen mask and like a meter.
Guys, it's very, so I've turned it off now, but this used to blink red when the air quality was bad. So I had this on the seat pocket in front of me on the plane. And then every 5 minutes, because the air quality was so bad, it kept flashing red. And I was like freaking out. Okay, I need to hide this because people might worry if they suddenly had this white plastic thing that starts flashing red in the middle of the night, because it was a overnight flight to the US.